So what's up, guys? Once again, I am Mike, and I am bringing to you an interpretation of an extremely famous article in linguistic anthropology. It is by Irvine and Gal. It's called Language Ideology and Linguistic Differentiation, which is found in this book, which is called Regimes of Language. At one time, this was the most cited piece in linguistic anthropology, and it's still up there. So this is a very long, very difficult article. If you have had trouble understanding this one, like I did, the first 20 times that I've read it, I strongly suggest that you read the earlier version of this piece from 1995. That one's called Boundaries of Language and Disciplines, How Ideologies Construct Difference. And I'll put the citation down in the description area. I don't know why, but it feels more reader friendly, even though much of the content is the same. But either way, I'm going to make this shit as easy as possible without watering it down. If you know my teaching style, then you know that just because I use simple or more colloquial language, that doesn't stop me from going in really deep into this shit. So it's going to take 2 videos that you got to watch till the end, because I'm going to make a full circle back to this first video and some of the first points that I make in this video. So, here's a quick tip. While you are reading this, I would advise you that you mark the first couple pages where the key terms are: erasure, iconization, and fractal recursivity. And also, no less important, is the idea of linguistic differentiation. And the first times you come across these words, flip back and reread the definition. Just try it. Don't question it. Just do it. It helped me out a lot. Somebody told me to do that, and I was like, oh, I get everything now. Okay, so let's cover linguistic differentiation first. Now, linguistic differentiation happens in many ways, but this chapter is about the ideological aspect. So on page 35, Irvine and Gal described it as the ideas with which participants and observers frame their understandings of linguistic varieties and map those understandings onto people, events, and activities that are significant to them. Okay, so just keep coming back to that definition as you go along. So these ideas can be called ideologies. So these are ways that ideas and beliefs come to rationalize the way we might perceive one group of people and their language as different from maybe ourselves, or as different from other groups that maybe we're not a part of. Okay, so we don't have to know about these ideologies as they're happening. If anything, they're largely below our awareness. But it is the position from which we, each person, interpret the world. So on page 36, they say there is no view from nowhere. That means our position as researchers and as readers and just observers necessarily presupposes an entire worldview. So this article is about the sometimes hidden semiotic processes that often guide or make differentiation possible. Now, first note to remember: this is not a linear process. These 3 semiotic processes that they describe, it doesn't happen one after the other, nice and neat. So it's not first iconization, then recursivity, then erasure. It's better to think about it as each of these processes making the next one possible. They work simultaneously. And this will become clearer as we move along, but it's a very common misconception that we think that, okay, so they list us 3 things that happen, so these three things happen in this order. Not necessarily. Not impossible, but not necessarily. So before we get into linguistic iconization, I want to talk about icon, or the icon. I want to talk about icon and erasure. So not iconization, the process, not yet. Although by the end of the lecture, you'll see that we were kind of talking about iconization the whole time. But let's move to a more basic level by talking about the icon. So an icon is a sign that directly resembles something. A great example of this are maps, which are direct geographic representations or pictures. They are an icon, or they are iconic of space and directly correlate to the imagined world. I'm going to start here because mainly maps hold so much ideological information about the world that a lot of it just gets extremely backgrounded, and we don't even think about it anymore. It's only when we do something drastic or we directly confront entire systems of beliefs that they become visible. This is what I mean. Now, for example, the US map holds much more information than we see. If you think about it, the way we drive, north, south, east, west, right? These are all ways that we've become accustomed to orienting our bodies in space. It also implies that there is a right side up from this particular angle. It also implies that there is a correct way to imagine the Earth from space. It's right side up. This can also apply to the entire solar system, which we imagine in a certain way, in a way that's not upside down, for example. So all these scales, which are spatial orientations, become reactivated again and again. Maps are no less than an explicit model of reality with all of these implicit ideologies. So it's only when ideological standpoints meet and clash and war with one another do they become visible to us very often. So have you ever seen an upside down US map? Now, it's weird because the regular map, or the right side up map, is an icon that has naturalized all sorts of information. The regular map, which is right side up, is only right side up though because it's backed by all sorts of scientific institutional knowledge, which has so thoroughly backgrounded other possibilities that they are practically erased. This is the word erasure. Let's think about this idea of right side up. It's quite literally a worldview. And on page 36, Irvine and Gall say that it's much easier perceiving ideologies other than our own. We can think of these colonial situations, as described in this chapter, as meetings of a right side up and an upside down map. Now here's the thing. Instead of acknowledging all the ideological stuff that is held within our map, the historical scholars in this study instead thought, our map is correct. We need to flip your upside down map over because it's wrong. And because in colonial situations, the right side up people are often more heavily armed, have access to more resources in general, they would force a new allegedly right side up map onto these realities. It would become necessary, however, to tidy things up. Page 59. Tidy things up. So if they don't fit into this right side up worldview, it simply, or the institutions who control this knowledge, simply erase the stuff that doesn't fit. So erasure, the process of erasure, will simply ignore or transform the parts of reality to make it fit into an institutionally backed correct way, or right side up way. Erasure is an extremely potent tool when enforcing an ideological reality. As shown in this chapter, maps are extremely effective. So I'm going to talk a little bit about linguistic maps. Using the state of Texas, where I'm from, and the place that I've been to all parts of, so I'm kind of familiar with the state in general. So this is Texas for the international students that aren't sure where Texas is at. This next picture, this is a census map of Spanish speakers. Now it says here that between 50 to 95% speak Spanish down at the very, very tip of Texas. So I'm from here. I grew up here. And you know, from this map, if you were to take these numbers on the high end, that suggests 95% Spanish speakers, you would think that you would need to know Spanish to function there. What the map doesn't say, what it erases, is how many bilingual speakers are there and how many English speakers are there. Now, if you didn't know how these numbers worked, or if you wanted to use these maps for a political purpose, you can imagine an institution like Fox News with Republican commentators using this map to say, we really need to put a border wall here. Look at all the Spanish speakers. 95% of the people there don't know English. Well, you know what? Practically everybody speaks English there. As there's so many first language English speakers there, I couldn't actually predict it, but I would say like 90% or something speak English. If you go to a store, it's going to be in English. If you call anywhere on the phone, they're going to answer in English. It's predominantly an English-speaking area. Also, there's already a border wall there. And also, there's already a very large river there that is probably harder to cross than a border wall. Not to mention all the Border Patrol checkpoints that are all over the damn place, to the north and the south of that area, of that dark brown area. There's Border Patrol checkpoints on top of that, lining that area. Now, this map tidies up the reality by not mentioning English speakers. That is textbook erasure. Let's look at another map from a popular magazine called Slate, or an online zine. So, in this map, all the pink states are the states where Spanish is the language most commonly used that's not English, right? Now look at all these apparently Spanish-speaking states. Now, can you imagine this map used by Fox News again to prove that we need to take our country back and we need to make America great again and we need to enforce English language only policies all over the place, because look at how Spanish is just taking over the United States. So this erases the total and complete dominance of English in the United States. That's erasure, once again. I keep mentioning Fox News, and in this case, Slate, which is a very popular magazine, or webzine. These are powerful institutions that create knowledge and offer a version of reality. Everything depends on who is backing these maps, and for what institutional function they are meant to achieve. Colonial powers, like those described in the chapter, used linguistic maps like this to create realities that did not actually match the actual on-the-ground reality. So at this point, we see that icons often employ erasure to tidy things up, to make things legible, or if backed by an institution, to mold reality in a certain way. With that said, iconization, like the kind described here, is not possible without erasure. So when we think of iconization, we can be sure that something is being erased somewhere. Some aspect is being pushed far back, far into the background, so that we don't see it anymore. That hopefully we forget about it. And forgetting is not a natural process. Often, it's enforced by a larger political economy with specific interests at stake. These interests might not want you to pay attention to certain aspects of reality, or to, like I said, forget it. So remember, erasure is a potent tool of ideology. Probably the most effective tool of ideology. Okay, so part 2 of this video, we're going to concentrate on the third case study, the Macedonia one. There, we're going to really go into the process of iconization and fractal recursivity. That's a big fancy word, but I'll make it really simple for y'all. And we're going to be thinking about broccoli. Yeah, broccoli, the vegetable. That's how I'm going to explain it to you guys. So I'm Mike. I'll see you real soon for part 2.